Hey guys, how's it going? My name is Neon and welcome back to another video. In today's video, we'll be checking out the GTX 1650 Super in combination with the i3-9100 in 16 games. Before we hop into it, I'm going to quickly go over the specs, and the first thing up is the 1650 Super. It has 1280 cores, 80 TMUs, and 32 ROPs. It also happens to have 4GB of GDDR6 memory, so it's roughly equivalent to an RX 6500 or a GTX 980, which makes sense because they both have 4GB as well. Anyways, moving on to my beloved i3, this is the 9100 non-F, meaning that it has integrated graphics. Anyways, it's part of the 9th generation of Intel CPUs, codenamed Coffee Lake, and it has 4 cores, 4 threads, and I believe it has a base clock of 3.6 GHz with a max turbo frequency of 4.2 on single core, I think. Anyways, the rest of the specs are in the description if you want to go check that out. But yeah, now that we're done with that, let's go ahead and get straight into the benchmarks. Alrighty, so here are the settings we're going to be using today. Obviously 1080p. And as you guys can see, basically everything at its lowest setting. Alrighty, so here we go. And as we start the game, we're getting pretty decent FPS. Okay, there we go. That was a little weird. We're getting a little over 60 FPS, which is really respectable, honestly, considering that this GPU is kind of old. But honestly, oh shit, I ran out of mousepad space. There we go. Yeah, honestly, I can't blame you for wanting to play the game like this. This is completely fine. Now, the CPU is getting a little hot. Dang, these guys are freaking camping, man. But the CPU is getting a little hot. Obviously, it's because of the Intel stock cooler. So remember, if you want to upgrade that, you probably should, honestly. Let's see. The GPU is getting a little hot, but that's okay. You don't really have to worry about that if you have a decently vandalized case. Otherwise, the RAM usage isn't too terribly high. Dang, should have died right there. Me, not the other guy. But yeah, honestly, just moving around, it's doing pretty well. The CPU, of course, is at 100% utilization, but at the same time, the GPU is also basically at like 90-95, so it's actually a pretty decent pairing, and the game is perfectly fine as it is. However, as we turn on frame gen and FSR 3.0, I think it's at the basic setting, so I think it's balanced in this game. We jump to around 90 FPS, which is still completely respectable. However, if you have played with any sort of frame gen, you will notice that that's not good. Okay, that's on me, I'm sorry. If you've ever played with any sort of frame gen, you can definitely tell that the game has a lot more input lag. But honestly, if you don't really care too much about that, you should be perfectly fine playing the game like this. In my opinion, it feels a little smoother. Obviously, like I said, there's more input lag. But if you're not playing the game super competitively, then you should be okay for the most part. The thing you might notice up there is that the GPU is more around 60 to 70% utilization in comparison to around like, what was it, like 195-ish. But yeah, other than that, the game's performing super well. And let's go ahead and move on to the next game. Alrighty, so now moving on to Counter-Strike. As you guys can see, we're at 1080p like before. Everything is basically at the low settings. Oops. But yeah, let's see how it performs. All right, let's go ahead and get an AK. But as you guys can see, oh shit, I kind of suck at this game. I haven't played in a while, but anyways, let's not talk about that. Let's talk about what's actually relevant. And as you guys can see, we're getting actually really good FPS. Oh my god, the sensitivity is awful. Okay, I cannot turn around, so if they're behind me, I might be cooked. Not the most intensive game in the world. Obviously, it's cooked, I guess, a quote-unquote esports title. Sorry if you hear the mouse moving around. But yeah, look at that. Inside of a building, we're getting 180 FPS. Ooh, let's get this guy. There we go. Oh, shit. Oh, look at that. Like 2 basically went from a CPU-intensive game to a GPU-intensive game, mostly because of the graphics overhaul. But yeah, it's going to work perfectly fine. You shouldn't have to really worry about it at all or anything. Anyways, let's leave that off on a good note, and let's move on to the next game. Alrighty, so now it is time for Cyberpunk at 1080p, and as you guys can see, we're on the low settings with that off. FSR 3, turn that off just to see how well it does on its own. But yeah, here's all the settings in case you want to copy it. Alrighty, so here we are in Night City, and we're getting a pretty respectable 50 to 55 FPS. As you can see, as we move deeper into the city, the FPS do begin to fluctuate a little bit more. Oh, look at these fellas over here, look at that. Go ahead and steal a car real quick. Obviously, I don't think this should have a problem with that. Hey, looks like the police took notice. That's okay. We could just drive off. As you guys can see, once we get into a slightly more intensive situation, the game does dip into the upper 40s. But once everything stabilizes, you're just driving around, just taking a look at everything. Yeah, honestly, it's pretty good. Oh god. Anyways, as I was saying, it's pretty good. We're obviously being limited by both our CPU and GPU because they're, but yeah, here you go right there. We did. Oh my goodness. Okay, we did. Alrighty, so moving on to Diablo at 1080p with FSR2 on the balance preset. Everything is at low, so here are the settings. Obviously, ray tracing is off. Alrighty, so as you guys see, we're getting pretty decent performance at the moment. Oh dang, it's taking forever to kill that thing. But yeah, here we are. So that's the main issue you guys just saw right there. We are running into a lot of stuttering, and this is not really, actually no, this is an issue of the computer. It's mostly because the CPU is pretty weak for the most part. It is an i3 from like what, 2018, 2019, so that's like what, 7 years now. But even at that, whenever we are getting a pretty stable performance, we're getting between 120 and 150 FPS, which is extremely good. But yeah, if you're okay with like occasional stutters and everything, then yeah, the game is perfectly playable and I would highly recommend. But yeah, other than that, let's go ahead and move on to the next game. Alrighty, so now it is time to test out Fortnite at 1080p using the competitive settings, except I turned FXAA on, and of course I turned shadows on because those can be used to your advantage. But yeah, there you go. So that's that. Let's go ahead and see how well it runs. Okay, so here we are playing Fortnite as like I said just now, 1080p competitive settings, and as you guys can see, it's not looking so good right now. Dropping into the map, we're getting around 60 FPS, but this game performs absolutely terribly whenever the map is loading in. As you guys can see, the FPS have stabilized. You'll definitely be experiencing constant dips like that. Oh, what is that? But yeah, if you had like a better CPU, like a i5, like a 9400F, actually even that would struggle quite a bit. Actually, now I'm thinking about it, maybe like an 8700K or just anything, like any i7 that's compatible with the LGA 1151 socket. I think it's 1151 or 1155, I don't know. That would do much better, and you'd probably get like 120, 130 FPS. Then your graphics card would be the limit. But yeah, here it is, performance mode. You guys can see the settings. We're about to hop into a game, but just in case you guys want to see the settings that I'll be using, here they are. So yeah, not anything too crazy. Okay, so here we go on performance mode. Obviously, okay, I guess our slider's just not gonna load in, but there we go. So you gotta give it a moment to load because the CPU is at 100%. That means that it's doing its best to try to load everything in, but unfortunately it just cannot. Yeah, the game is performing well. Obviously not all the textures have loaded in. That's perfectly okay. You might have to give it a game or two for the game to fully optimize. So in case you're running into issues like, look at the tree, like that looks awful, give it some time. Maybe play a game that you don't mind losing and then just back out or just restart your game. But yeah, it's playing significantly better. I'm gonna go see if I can go fight those guys, give it a game or two, and then yeah, because you have glimpses of the game performing super well, you get like 160 FPS. I'm pretty sure whenever the game fully loads in and everything is hunky-dory, you get between 120 and like 140 FPS. But in this case over here, the game doesn't feel too bad, although you do feel the stuttering and the dipping below like 100 FPS quite severely. Anyways, now that we're done with this, let's go ahead and move on to the next game, shall we? Alrighty, so moving on to Forza Horizon 4, as you guys can see, we're on medium at 1080p, all the settings, so here they are in case you want to copy them or just use the medium preset. But yeah, let's go ahead and see how well it runs. Alright, so here we are playing Forza Horizon and we're getting 120 FPS. Personally, I find this completely playable. The game doesn't look bad at all on the medium settings. I'm pretty sure it's the same settings that like the Xbox One S uses and all that stuff. But yeah, if you want I guess a high refresh rate gaming experience, yeah, this will work perfectly fine once you kind of get to speed up a little bit more. Okay. Anyways, as I was saying, the game might fluctuate a little more depending on what area of the map you're in. But yeah, consider it completely playable. The game is not stuttering. We're using about 8 gigabytes of RAM. But yeah, other than that, let's go ahead and move on to the next game, shall we? Okay, now it is time to test out GTA 5, and as you guys can see, we're at 1080p. The graphics setting is set to minimum because if we try to put it to high, the VRAM limit, it just goes over, and it's probably not going to be very fun playing like that. But yeah, let's go ahead and see how well it runs. Alright, so moving on to GTA 5 on the minimum settings like I just showed you guys basically. Yeah, we're getting pretty decent performance. We're obviously in the prologue, so the game is not going to be this good in performance. Anyways, as you guys can see, the performance is incredible. We're getting around 140 FPS. The game doesn't look bad at all. Obviously, GTA 6 is going to come out later next year. Yeah, this computer will definitely not be able to run it. Not because it can't, but because it won't even come out on PC. Probably not for a while. But anyways, we're getting sidetracked. As we kind of move forward and we're kindly disposing of these officers, the game does dip a little bit into the high to mid 120s on occasion, but other than that, the game's performing super well. We're using less than 8 gigabytes of RAM. So anyways, other than that, let's go ahead and get straight into the next game. Okay, now moving on to Marvel Rivals, which is probably the game that you're here for. As you guys can see, everything VSync is off and all that stuff, and we're gonna go ahead and turn this down to low. Don't know why it automatically picked up on medium, but here you guys go. Everything is on low. Alrighty, so here we are on the low settings on 1080p. Oh my goodness, that blade is going through it. Okay, anyways, as you guys can see, the performance isn't looking too hot at the moment. Anyways, as you guys can see, the performance is pretty bad. We are currently limited mostly by our GPU, and obviously a better CPU would help, but you guys can see we're being absolutely maxed out. Sorry, I bumped into the mic. We're being maxed out by our GPU, which unfortunately it just isn't strong enough to really, I guess, play the game smoothly without any like assistance from things such as like FSR or frame gen in this case. Thankfully there are some other alternatives. For example, you could bump down the resolution to 720p. I'm sure that would be quite a bit better. Okay, so now it is time for Minecraft with, I think it's 10 chunks, and we're using like fancy graphics and smooth lighting and all that stuff. But look at that. So when the world is finished generating, oh, look at the FPS, dude. Oh, almost 700. Wow. But yeah, once the game is finished loading in, you could definitely bump up the settings if you'd like, and you could also bump up the renderer, not the render resolution, the render distance. Something else that you might want to look at is the VRAM usage. It is extremely low because Minecraft generally isn't a very GPU intensive game. However, we're about to turn some shaders on, which will flip the switch. It'll be a GPU intensive game instead of a CPU intensive game. Alrighty, here we go. So we have the BSL shaders on, and we're still getting around 100 FPS. These shaders are very nice. It's super nice. The lighting is really nice. It's a very, very nice classic, you know, go-to shaders for Minecraft most of the time. You will see that we are using the GPU a lot more than we were before. Over here, which are a little bit more intensive, there's more ocean and, you know, more processing power needed, 70 FPS, but still pretty good. If we go ahead and swap to the nostalgia shaders, which is personally my favorite, we do cut our FPS down by quite a bit more, but yeah, it's still playable. We're getting around 60, maybe a little less than 60, sub 60 FPS performance, but it's still completely playable. I would recommend like Sildurs Vibrant or BSL because these shaders are pretty intensive, especially for the water. If we jump in, you guys will see what I mean. Just amazing. Yeah. Then if we move on to Sildurs Vibrant shaders medium, which is personally my go-to shaders whenever there's like a low-end device that I'm using, like a laptop. And yeah, it gives you everything that you would expect from shaders. It gives you nice lighting. Yeah, it gives you shadows. You know, look at that. See, the trees are waving back and forth, and it's incredible. It gives you incredible performance, even better than even BSL because it's less intensive. Really, at this point, it's up to your choice depending on what shaders you want and if you prefer looks over performance and vice versa. And last but not least, we have Sildurs Enhanced Default, which is for those who want like moving leaves and shadows without, it provides lighting and all that stuff, but this is, oh yeah, and your own personal shadow. That's another thing that people like, but it maintains anything. It's not like hyper realistic. It's not super demanding. Yeah, like, I mean, take a look. The water, it looks like normal water, but reflections. It's very nice. It's very subtle. Anyways, other than that, let's go ahead and move on to the next game, shall we? Anyways, moving on from that, now it is time to play R.E.P.O on the medium settings with all the effects off because it makes the game look a bunch better. Okay, so here we are in the mansion and we're getting a really impressive 200 FPS from the game. Yeah, check it out. It's doing pretty okay for the most part. If we just kind of look around, you know, maybe hide under the table and stuff like that. But yeah, if you want to play R.E.P.O with friends, this is more than capable of playing. In this case, once again, we're running into a GPU bottleneck instead of a CPU bottleneck, but I don't think that's really important. 200 FPS is more than plenty. All right, I think that's enough of this game. Let's go ahead and move on to the next game. Okay, moving on from that game, we are now testing out Resident Evil 8 Village. We are using Fidelity FX Super Resolution. Just for the sake of the fact that we're on medium settings, you could technically play on the low settings, but so yeah, basically everything is at the quote-unquote medium settings, but yeah, let's go ahead and see how well it runs. Okay, so here we are, and as we make our way through the castle, yeah, check it out. We're getting a pretty impressive 120 FPS. Look at that. Once we do step into this room, which is a little bit more intensive, I'm actually kind of surprised the FPS didn't dip that much. However, in most cases, the FPS do dip quite a bit. But yeah, let's go ahead and go outside for a second. Oh, yeah, look at that. Pretty big dip in performance. I don't have any bullets. Oh, shoot. Careful. Okay, let's go ahead and heal. Anyways, other than that, during boss fights, the game might... Oh. Hi. Okay, let's run away from her. Okay, so now we're going to test out Schedule 1 on the medium settings with SMAA and batteries. Yeah, let's keep that on. Check that out. So on the medium settings, we're getting around 70 to 80 FPS. Great. Okay, the map is loading in. That's probably why. Perfectly fine. Oh, by the way, these are the God rays I was talking about. I don't know if you guys can see them, but you see the sun shining through, kind of like you would in a window in the morning. And another thing you might realize is that it's not maxing out the GPU or the CPU. I don't know why that is, but I mean, that's great. It's not straining the CPU to the point where it gets crazy hot, and the GPU fans don't have to kick in too much, so it keeps the PC nice and quiet. But yeah, other than that, let's go ahead and move on to the next game, shall we? Alrighty, so now it is time to test out the forest on 1080p on the high preset. So here you guys go. Check out the settings, look at it. But yeah, let's get into it. Alrighty, so here we are on the plane just spawning in, and honestly, this is a bit better than I expected. I expected to be stuck in maybe like the mid 60s, but so far we're looking pretty good. We are roughly getting around 80 FPS. Once we get to this more open area, oh, we're at Goose Lake. That's pretty cool. Actually, that's really good because we can go out into the open area near the bay, and we can see how far FPS can go. Anyways, in a densely vegetated forest, which basically just means in a forest with a bunch of, well, woods and trees and grass and whatnot, yeah, you're getting around 70 FPS. Now, once we do come out into this more open area, as you guys can see, we're getting around 90, 100, 111. Yeah, this is the least intensive area. Oh, there we go. Look at that. 125. That's about as much as you're going to get. But yeah, other than that, go ahead and move on to the next game, shall we? Okay, moving on to Sons of the Forest. As you guys can see, we are at 1080p on the medium settings. So there you guys go. Scroll down a little more. We are going to be using FSR3 by default on the balance preset because this game just isn't going to run that well without it on. But yeah, let's go ahead and see how well it runs. Alrighty, so here we are as we exit our little cabin. Not looking too bad at all. We're running at around 60-ish FPS. Dude, this is not bad at all. This is not a bad looking game, and by all means not an easy game to run. And yeah, as you guys can see, once again, hand in hand, our GPU and our CPU are, nothing is basically bottlenecking anything. In this case, when we are playing the game a little bit and it does take a little while to load, that's more on the CPU's end. But right here, it looks like we're actually dipping into around 70% utilization. I think at this point, a better graphics card, maybe like a 5700 XT or RTX 3060, or any 20 series GPU like a 2060 would be better with more VRAM. But yeah, look at that. Okay, so as we drive around and the game has a little bit more to load in, okay, we're gonna fall. Anyways, apart from that, let's go ahead and move on to the next game, shall we? Okay, now moving on from that, we are playing Subnautica at 1080p on the high settings, as you guys can see. Let's turn on the overlay, and there we go. Let's go ahead and equip our knife. Yeah, check it out. We're getting around 70 FPS while we're inside our base. Now, if we go ahead and we're looking into the kelp forest, which is usually one of the more intensive parts of the safe shallows. There are obviously more intensive parts in the game. I won't spoil anything, maybe not well over, but we're getting over 60 FPS. I think in this case, you might want to bump the settings down because the difference between high and medium isn't that crazy, apart from maybe like the rays of sunlight and stuff like that. But yeah, in this case, we are being bottlenecked by our GPU, as you guys can see, because our CPU is kind of sitting at around 50 to 80% utilization, jumping up and down depending on what is loading. And our GPU is just completely at 100%. It's at 98, but it's basically at 100%. Anyways, other than that, let's go ahead and move on to the next game, shall we? And finally, the last game we'll be checking out is Valorant on the competitive settings, which is basically everything on low. And for my own sake, I turned MSA, actually FXAA. So basically everything on low, anti-aliasing is FXAA. And yep, that's it. So let's go ahead and see how well it runs. Alrighty, so now it is time to check out. Oh, hi. That's probably going to be pretty useful. We're getting around 200 FPS, which is really good. This is what you want to see in a competitive esports shooter like Valorant. We're not using more than like 8 gigabytes of RAM because up there it says we're using 42% of our memory. We have 16. You can do the basic math. We're probably using around probably like 8, maybe 7 gigabytes, which is great. But yeah, we're getting a consistent frame rate. It's not like we're dipping into like any crazy numbers or anything like that. So yeah, if you want to play the game competitively, this is perfectly fine, and I would highly recommend playing this game. Anyways, apart from that, I don't think we have anything else to benchmark. So I hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you want to see more videos like this, make sure to like and subscribe for more. If you want to comment, let me know what I did right or wrong in the comments, obviously, like I just said. But yeah, thank you so much for watching, and I hope I'll catch you guys next time. So yeah, peace out, y'all.